What is up everyone, Boshi here, back at it in Raid Shadow Legends, and it looks like we have that classic arena fix for bronze and silver, and we also have a 10 times event including some cleansers. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, so yes, earlier this morning we went down for maintenance in a raid, and they input the classic arena fix for the bronze and silver tiers. So if you haven't read up on it, I'll go ahead and throw it up on the screen. I'll also leave a link down in the description below, but pretty much this was announced a little while ago. They just weren't sure when they were going to be able to implement it, and now they have. Pretty much what they're trying to do is fix the matchmaking for bronze and silver, trying to not make it like so hectic or hard or like outclassed and whatnot. So hopefully you guys are seeing a difference if you are in the bronze and silver tier. And they also are making a change to the defensive battles. So when you set up a defense, you can get beaten and actually lose points, which means you can drop in tiers. What they're trying to do is not make this as harsh where you're losing a lot of points through defensive battles. So I think they're trying to correct this so when people climb, they're not just getting pushed right back down when they're like offline and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys are seeing a difference. Let me know if you guys are fighting in the bronze and silver tier, if you guys are seeing that type of difference with matchmaking and with the defensive battles and staying in the tier that you are in. They're hoping that this is going to help alongside, like, you know, helping get arbiter missions done and stuff like that, and I'm hoping this does too, because I know people want to move on to the newer missions and stuff like that. So hopefully this all helps out, and it's just in time for the classic arena tournament that is for the rule fragment. So it's a good time to try it out, right? So next is going to be the 10 times summon. So the 10 times summon is including a bunch of cleansing champions, so people that remove debuffs or have that possibility of removing debuffs. Pretty decent champions. I'm not going to say they're the best. I'll go ahead and go through them pretty quick, give you my opinion on them, and yeah, I'll let you know if I think it's worth summoning, even though I'm going to say it's somewhat worth summoning already, and that's just because we have a summons rush, and it's for the rule fragment fusion. So if you're in need of those fragments from the summons rush, you're going to be summoning anyway. But it's good to know at least what you have a higher chance of getting. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, the first champion we're going to talk about is a high elf by the name of Battlesage. So Battlesage can actually be a pretty decent farmer for campaign, for leveling people, and it's just due to her A1 ability because it is a straight up AoE. So it's pretty cool, pretty decent, and she's actually pretty quick. I used her as a campaign farmer for a little while. She is a tad bit slower, and that's just because she will prioritize using an A2 when you have food running with her. So yeah, let's go ahead go through her kit though, or I'm getting ahead of myself. So she is considered a support champion. So like I said, A1 is an AoE, full on AoE, which is really cool. On the A2 is going to be her cleanse ability, so it's Nature's Touch. Place a 50% increase attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, then removes all debuffs on all allies. This buff cannot be removed, and it can go down to a 3-turn cooldown. So this ability is a little bit unique. So if you build her in an immunity set, you can actually get around the Torment freeze. So pretty much what you're going to be doing is placing that buff, which will trigger Torment freeze possibly, and then if it does happen to freeze anyone, she will then remove all debuffs from all your allies, which kind of gets around it. So if you can place her in an immunity set, works very well against Torment teams in PvP, as long as you can make her quick enough, obviously. But yeah, pretty unique cleanse. And then on the A3 we have Mother's Embrace. Place a revive on death buff on a target ally for 3 turns. The ally will instantly revive if killed. 6-turn cooldown, can drop down to a 4-turn cooldown. I'm not a big fan of revive on death, and especially if it's instantly revived, just because if that person's not next in line, which they aren't gaining any type of turn meter or anything, they have a possibility of just dying again. So not a big fan of this ability, but it can be pretty cool in PvE content, especially since it's a buff that lasts 3 turns, and this can go down to a 4-turn cooldown. So yeah, not bad, but nothing too amazing. And then on the aura, we have an increased ally speed in all battles by 19%, pretty decent, not the fastest ally speed aura, but it is in all battles, so pretty useful every once in a while, especially for the speed runs in for campaign if you're trying to farm quick. Next is going to be Sanguinia. So Sanguinia is a unique cleanser, support champion from the Sacred Order. Looks really awesome. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump through the kit. So on the A1 we have Red Punishment. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 20% or 30% chance, if you book it, of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by 1 turn. Nothing too amazing. I do like the fact that it is a triple hit, but the whole 2 random debuffs isn't going to come in too much handy. You know, not many bosses contain buffs, and then also PvP, it's 2 random buffs, so you might not even get the ones that you want. So I mean, it's not a bad A1, and it's a low chance as that, so nothing too great, but not horrible. On the A2 we have Holy Blood. Place a block debuffs buff on allies for 1 turn, and then a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. And you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Very cool. I wish the block debuffs was 1 turn longer, but it can come in handy, especially during like boss fights or even PvP on the initial turn, if you can get that up. On the A3 we have Sacrificial Lamb. Attack one enemy has a 75 or 100% chance, if you book it, of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. So that's really cool. If you get a bunch of debuffs on you, you can just transfer it to a target. That can work very well on bosses and stuff. And then the cleansing portion, remove all debuffs from all allies except this champion. So pretty much you're going to be taking all your debuffs, placing it on an opponent, and then you're going to cleanse the rest of your team. So a very unique way of cleansing your team, which is pretty cool, and this can go down to a 4-turn cooldown. Honestly, pretty cool. I have yet to really try to do like a setup with her, but it seems like it would be a really fun thing to do. And then we have an aura for increased ally accuracy in Doom Tower battles by 55. Not bad, but it is specific to Doom Tower, so I could possibly see this being used in like Spider or something like that, where you can transfer a bunch of the poisons back onto the Spider. But yeah. Next we have Cardiel. So Cardiel is like the one champion in this 10 times list that I think is going to be definitely worth going for if you're going to open voids. But unfortunately, of course, they add a great champion after we do a 2 times void event. So not sure how many people have voids left. But yeah, so support legendary void champion. On the A1 we have Cow the Wicked. Attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 7.5% of their max HP, and then also places a True Fear debuff for 1 turn if the target is a champion from the Demon Spawn, Undead, or Knights Revenant faction. Pretty cool ability. You get books for damage and healing on the A1, so nothing too crazy book-wise on the A1 though. On the A2 we have Angel Song. Removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs buff and a revive on death buff on all allies for 2 turns. And the revive on death buff cannot be removed, and this can go down to a 3-turn cooldown. Pretty crazy considering you are placing the buffs on from this ability for 2 turns, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown, and they're major buffs. Like I said before though, with Battlesage, I'm not a big fan of Revive on Death, but it can come in handy within Arena, and this is pretty much where he's going to shine. On the A3 we have Heavenly Host. Place a 30% increased crit rate buff and 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, then teams up with all allies to attack a target enemy. Decrease the cooldown of this skill by 1 turn if an enemy is killed from this attack, and it's on a 4-turn cooldown if you book it. Extremely good. You're doing an increased crit rate, increased crit damage, so you don't even have to put your other people at 100% crit rate technically. And you're doing more damage with the increased crit damage. So very, very good for blender comps in PvP, even if the reaction sets are coming out more and more in Arena with not being able to crit possibly. So definitely a really good ability still, and really good champion overall. And then we have the passive Fiend Warden. Allies receive 20% less damage from champions from the Demon Spawn, Undead, or Night Rev faction, which you actually do see a lot of those factions in PvP. And then whenever an ally attacks, has a 15% chance to team up with them and join their attack. This champion will attack with their default skill, will always join Assistia Flametongue's attack if they are on the same team, and then can only join an ally's attack once per turn. Cardiel will not team up on ally attacks when they counterattack or when they team up attack with another champion. Trying to keep it balanced pretty much is what they're trying to do with this passive. And you can up the chance by 15%, so has a 30% chance if you book it. So extremely cool kit. And then you have an aura that is puny for a legendary champion, I must say, but with the rest of his kit, I understand why they didn't give him a extremely strong aura. So 19% speed in all battles. But yeah, extremely worth going for if you have any voids going or left from the 2x void event. So the next one we're going to talk about is, I'm looking at my list over here, Uugo. So Uugo is an Ogryn, extremely good epic. I think a lot of content creators made some videos on her right when they came out with her, and she's just extremely good. So another support champion, and you're pretty much going to see a lot of support champions because they are the cleansers of this game. So on the A1 we have Blackhand, attacks one enemy, has a 35% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. The chance is increased by 5% for each enemy alive. This is really cool. I like the whole, you're not really booking for percentage here, you're actually just getting a flat extra 25% possibly during waves, which puts it up to a decent chance of 60%. And leech, one of my favorite debuffs. I think I say that almost every time I see leech as a debuff. So really cool, good for sustain. On the A2 we have Maelstrom Rack. Yeah, Maelstrom Rack. Attacks all enemies, has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 75% chance if booked of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. The chance of placing the block buffs debuff increased by 5% for each alive enemy. So if you're going against a full set of like full enemy wave, this actually will go up to 100% chance when you have it fully booked. But yeah, the decreased defense is pretty major. Block buffs is very helpful, especially in faction wars when you go against people like the Valkyrie waves. You can just pure out block all the counterattack and shield buffs. But yeah, very cool ability, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown as well with books, so very good. On the A3 we have Uugo's Brew. Remove all heal reduction debuffs from all allies, then removes a random debuff from all allies, then heals all allies by 20% of this champion's max HP, and if all enemies are if all allies are dead, revive them with 50% HP, then fills their turn meter by 50% instead. And you can just drop this down to a 4-turn cooldown with books. So this is not as good as a cleanse because you're removing definitely a heal reduction debuff, but then one random debuff from all allies. So not the best cleanse, but you're also getting a heal alongside of it, and it acts as a res if Uugo is the only one alive. So overall, I think that makes up for the fact that it's not a full-on cleanse. So yeah, really cool ability there. And then we have the passive Final Spite, places a 30% increased speed buff and a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever this whenever this champion's last living ally is killed. So pretty much what they're trying to do with this passive is that if Uugo is the last one standing, you're going to get increased speed buff and you're going to get a block damage buff, so you survive all damage. So you can end up using Uugo's Brew to revive all your allies. The only issue that I see with Uugo and this whole passive is the fact that you can still be CC'd. You can still have True Fear, you can still have block cooldown skills, all that type of stuff where it is going to prevent you from rezzing. But it is a pretty cool thing, and I definitely think it's worth leveling Uugo for faction wars, because that can come in very clutch when Uugo is the last one standing during like faction 21. You res your whole team, kill the boss, you get that 3-star, you finish faction wars for Ogryn. So yeah, definitely worth looking at and leveling. I actually just leveled mine recently, so I'm going to be giving her a try in a couple of different dungeons. Next, we're going to look at a skinwalker by the name of Hakkorhn Smashlord. So Hakkorhn looks really cool, has a huge hammer, most, well, not most annoying, but pretty annoying in arena. So this is a Skinwalker HP legendary champion. So on the A1 we have Inhuman Force, attack one enemy, has a 40 or a 55% chance if you book it of placing a stun debuff for one turn. Nothing too major, but can come in handy in PvP or in faction wars to stun a specific target. On the A2 we have the Cleanse. So Rallying Bellow removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns, heals all allies by 15% of this champion's max HP, this champion's max HP, which is really cool, or this champion's HP, not max HP, and then heals each ally by an extra 10% of this champion's max HP for each debuff removed from them. You can't drop the cooldown on this, you can increase the healing a bit, but the books, books for the healing percentages, it is a fraction of healing, so not too big on booking the A2 there. On the A1 you're getting a couple of percentage to stun, and then we have the A3, which is pretty big and probably worth the book for a cooldown if you can get it, in Blood Offering. So sacrifices HP equal to 25% of this champion's max HP, then attacks all enemies. Damage inflicted is equal to 50% of this champion's max HP. This attack is always a normal hit, so it can't crit. The HP sacrifice will happen even if it kills this champion, so you got to be careful with it, but it does hit quite hard. And you can drop it down to a 4-turn cooldown. And we have an aura for ally HP in dungeons by 33%. Not too bad, but it is only specific for dungeons. But yeah, overall, pretty cool champion. Definitely worth going for if you need a skinwalker for faction wars. He is extremely good in PvP for the fact of removing debuffs and putting block debuffs and healing. He can be a beast of a guy to get through in arena. So yeah, pretty cool there. Next we have a demon spawn by the name of Countess Lix. So Countess Lix was on a weird event where you could pretty much get a guaranteed one if you opened, I think, 140 ancient shards. She is an attack-based champion and works as the counterpart to Astralon. So they work pretty well together. Very cool duo in PvP. Let's go ahead and go through the kit. So on the A1 we have Festering Caress. Attack one enemy 2 times, has a 30 or 50% chance if you book it of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Pretty cool. I wish the chance was higher, but you are attacking 2 times, so you have a semi-higher chance there. On the A2 we have Mire of Misery. Attack all enemies 3 times. Each hit has a 75 or 100% chance if you book it of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Each hit also has a 100% chance if booked of decreasing the enemy's turn meter by 10%, which is a total of 30% since you're attacking 3 times. And you can drop this down to a 4-turn cooldown. This is crazy for PvP because you're placing that decreased speed and you're lowering everyone's turn meter on the enemy team if you can go first. So that's pretty big, and pretty good for actually dungeons and, slowing down the waves so they don't get a turn. So pretty cool there. On the A3 we have Time Dilation. Attack all enemies, has a 75 or 100% chance if booked of placing a block active skill debuff for 2 turns, and then also decreases the cooldown of all ally skills except this champion's by 1 turn. And you can drop this down to a 5-turn cooldown. It still is a pretty hefty cooldown, but it is a pretty major skill, right? You're lowering everyone's cooldowns by 1, you're placing a block active skills on everyone else, and you're hitting everyone, right? So you have 2 AoE abilities right off the bat right here, and then you have one that you're placing a weaken with the A1, which is good for boss fights. So on the passive we have Unredeemed. Removes 1 random debuff from Astralon and this champion at the start of each turn, only available if Astralon's on the team. So you have a cleanse, quote unquote, right there. And then you have the other passive, Channel Woe, fills this champion's turn meter by 5% each time an ally receives a debuff. Can come in handy. For dungeons, you're particularly trying not to allow your enemy waves to have a turn, so you're pretty much not going to gain anything right here. And then on PvP, you want to be the person to go first and hopefully blow up your opponent. So not the best passive, I would say, but it is just by getting placed on, so it could just be a passive thing like hitting Krisk or something like that and receiving debuffs, and you'll get a turn meter increase on her. But overall, really good combination with Astralon though, and honestly she might be worth leveling just in general, so really cool. Next we have Skartorsis from the Undead. So Skartorsis, I have one. I have not had the urge to use him, unfortunately. He's just a weird type champion, so we'll go through his kit. So Undead, legendary. Undead has a lot of legendaries, so that's also, I think, a thing. But first on the A1, we have Hand of Doom. Attack all enemies has a 30 or a 50% chance, if you book it, of stealing one random buff from each enemy. This can be a really cool ability in PvP, especially like if you're going second, or if they have like passive shields or something, you could just steal them. On the A2, we have Command, places a 50% increased attack buff and a 30% increased crit rate buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown if you book it. So, a 3-turn buffer right there, increase all your, attacking allies and stuff like that. So that can come in handy. But, if it was like a 3-turn for 3-turn, then you can, kind of build around him where you don't have to build your other people with crit rate, but having it only on a 2-turn cooldown, well, a 3-turn cooldown but only lasting 2 turns, you can't necessarily do that. So the crit rate is pretty neglectable there, and you're pretty much getting a 50% increased attack buff right there. And then on the A3, we have Rebirth, heal all allies, then removes all debuffs from them. The amount by which each ally is healed increases according to the number of debuffs on them. And the amount by which each ally's turn meter is filled increases according to the number of debuffs on them. And you can drop this down by 2 turns down to a 5-turn cooldown. Pretty cool there, just because it's a full-on cleanse and heal, but it is on a 5-turn cooldown. So unless you make him extremely fast, he is going to still take turns pretty slowly in getting through the cleansing again. Now, his aura does help him out there with ally speed in dungeons by 33%, but overall, like I said, for dungeons specifically, you want to do speed runs, so he's not going to be cleansing often, which might be a good thing. So you only have to use it once or twice. But overall, my opinion, I've never been impressed by Skartorsis, so don't really think he's worth going for in particular. And then the last one we have, I know this is a long video, guys, sorry for that, is going to be Runekeeper Dazdurk. So it is a void dwarf. I love dwarves. He is an extremely cool looking dwarf as well. Has a big rune scroll on his back. So I use him in my Doom Tower boss for Nether Spider. He is an extremely good cleanser. So on the A1, we have Siphon Symbol. Attack one enemy has a 35 or 45% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns. I always say I loved leech debuffs, so there it is. So leech debuff definitely helps out with sustaining your team when you're not healing them. On the A2, we have Rune of Battle, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, then fills the turn meter of all allies by 25% on a 3-turn cooldown. This is extremely cool. I love the increased attack. You're not putting, like Skartorsis, you're not putting an increased crit rate, which pretty much is useless because you're typically building everyone for 100% crit. But instead you're increasing their turn meter by 25%, which is really always a good thing. So yeah. And then on the A3, we have Purity Sigil. Remove all debuffs from all allies, then heals all allies by 25% of this champion's max HP, and then places a 15% continuous heal buff for 2 turns on allies that have debuffs removed, on a 4-turn cooldown if you book it. So really cool. You remove all the debuffs, you heal for a big amount, and then you are putting a continuous heal if they had debuffs on them, which will sustain their health even further. So overall, really good ability there. And then we have an aura, increase ally attack in all battles by 25%. A little odd because he is a support champion, and you're not really building him for attack, but it does kind of go with the fact that you can use A2 to increase attack, use his aura to increase attack, so he is that support champion to keep your squishy people alive while giving them a lot of attack power. So really, really good champion, and he is void, which means you can use him anywhere. So overall, extremely good champion. Overall though, guys, that is the champions that are going to be for the 10 times event. Always make sure, I usually say this at the beginning of the video, so I'm sorry for that. Always make sure that you're clicking on the information button when the summoning event goes live, just to make sure you are seeing all the champions right down here. You know, the increase, like the chances aren't increased to get epics or legendaries, so always keep that in mind. Do I think it's worth summoning for this event? Like I said at the beginning of the video, it is for the summons rush for rules fragment fusion, so you're probably going to be summoning anyway, but you could be using mystery shards. So is it worth summoning with voids and like sacreds and ancients? In my opinion, there aren't too great of champions in this one. You know, things like Cardiel or Runekeeper Dazdurk are really good, but they are void champions, and we just went through a 2 times void. And then things like Uugo, I'm trying to look at my list here. Uugo is really good, but then you have like Countess Lix was pretty much a guaranteed one a while back. Hakkorhn Smashlord's really good, but is a legendary. So yeah, it's a little hard to say. In my opinion, I would say keep if you have any shards left, because we have Sacred 2 times coming up the following week after this weekend. Obviously, I would say do not at all use any Sacred shards during this event, unless you are in dire need of any of these epics, or if you want a Hakkorhn Smashlord or Skartorsis very badly. But in my opinion, definitely not worth Sacred shards. And then we have a 10 times, and then it should be a 2 times ancient. So you pretty much want to keep on shards for the most part. The champions that are worth going for, in my opinion, on this 10 times are void. So if you have voids, you just went through the 2 times, so definitely pop them, because you know it can't hurt, and you have plenty of time to get the voids back. But yeah, that is all I have for you guys. That is all after, you know, I ranted for 27 minutes. So I hope this helped you guys. I hope the Classic Arena fix has helped a lot of you guys. And let me know if you guys will be pulling this weekend. Let me know if the Classic Arena is looking better for you guys. And I will talk to you guys later. See ya.